Hi guys. It's Abigail. We're gonna do two girls, one cut with a hard T. Um, Britt's over there.
Hello.
Trace is somewhere.
What's up?
Um, you can catch us on Nighthawk Radio, all one word, on the Facebook page. Seth's Daily Podcast on YouTube and Spotify, and Seth the Soil Guy on TikTok. Um, we have decided that this week we are going to talk about Dennis Rader. Um, Dennis Rader, if you don't know him by his government name, you would know him by three letters: B period T period K period. And he was a gentleman that completely terrorized all of the Midwest for 30 years. Um, and had some really weird, sick, quirk, fantasies, fetishes, likes, dislikes, and um, was still able to be like a normal human being, dad, husband, employee, all of that. So I find it odd with him that his first set of crimes that he chose to commit was, I felt like a big one. I mean, he decided
Probably
that
the biggest.
he was going to take out an entire family, just right out of the gate, right off the rip.
I don't think that that was his intention to begin with, though, right?
Well, no, but he knew the size of the family because he had stalked them out.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that there was multiple kids. He knew that there was, like nuclear parents, and he had every opportunity to back out. Um, he,
I was see in the book, his autobiography. He says that he thought that the dad was going to be gone,
All right.
mhm,
Yeah.
um, and he went into the backyard, and I guess he didn't realize that they had a dog.
mhm,
It was snow. There was snow on the ground, and he saw dog prints,
mhm,
like paw prints in the snow. And that kind of made him second guess, oh, do I actually want to do this? And then dad came out the back door, letting the dog out.
right,
Dad
We're
kind of
talking about
ran
the
face to
Otero
face.
family.
Yes,
yes,
the
Yeah.
Otero family. Dad
yes.
came face to face with him, and then he was like, well,
I
I guess
guess
we're
here we
doing
are.
this.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. I had already cut the phone
Yeah.
lines.
There's no turning
Yeah.
back now.
Yeah.
Yep, had already cased the house. Had already been watching these people for I think I read a couple weeks because he kind
Yeah.
of got to know their school routine, where the kids went, which kids went with who. And luckily for the two older ones, they had to go to school earlier than everybody else. So while essentially the whole family was finishing up their morning, trying to get ready, make lunches, get out the door, the two older ones had already left to go to school, and then that left him with mom, dad, and the two small children. But with this one, really, with this one, um, the part about it that was so disturbing was the daughter,
Yes.
the young
I
daughter,
agree. Yeah.
because he found her very attractive. He found her intriguing. He found her like sexually very.
And she was very young, like
She was.
9 years old.
I'm
I think
pretty
she was
sure is she
11.
11?
I
Was
think
she?
she was
Yeah,
Okay.
11,
Okay.
and the brother was 9.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So when he saw her outside just being a regular kid playing, as he was, scoping and stalking, he made it very clear that he um he was really into her. Like the other people were just kind of in the way.
And
Um
in the autobiography, he really like goes into depth with the detail. Um, and it literally it brought tears to my eyes. Like how I don't know. I just don't understand how somebody
Well,
could
and I think
do the
the
things that he did
dad,
to a child.
oh,
Joseph Otero, the dad,
Hmm.
um, he tied and bound him on the floor and put, I think, a bag over his head
Hmm.
to suffocate him, and he chewed through the bag.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this told you a little bit about this guy's character as far as, his he was military.
mm-hmm.
So, I mean, his survival, I guess, instincts kind of kicked in, and Raider put another bag over his head and let him slowly suffocate, which would, to me, would be, I would just assume you go ahead and shoot me
Oh,
Right.
as to put a bag
Right.
over me and let me
5 times
suffocate.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I read that he had also put, I think, like a pillowcase and a couple of t-shirts over top of those as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
That makes me panic
Oh,
just hearing that.
absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
here they
That's
are, all in the kitchen making their lunches,
Hmm.
and this man appears, and then he tries to tell them this horseshit story as to why he's there, or what he wants, or what he needs.
And he kind of gives all
Knowing,
of his victims this rundown
yeah,
of I'm a man on the run. They're looking for me. I
I need
just,
your car, I need your money. If you cooperate, I
I need
will
some
not
food.
hurt you.
Yeah.
And they played the game, and they um he actually kind of tried to put them at ease, which I found that to be really disgusting, because if you're in there and you have all of these items, you know what you're going in there to do.
Yeah.
These people are not going to get away.
but that's not the first time we've heard that from serial killers.
Right.
Um, the guy out in L.A. Britt always reminds me of the name because I can never remember the name because they changed it like 3 or 4 times. But he would take the woman and take her into a separate room and rape her. But if there was a male involved, he would tie him up, put dishes on his back.
Oh, yeah.
And that way, if he heard the dishes move, he knew that guy was getting loose or trying to get loose. But he would always tell him that, if you do what I tell you, nothing bad's going to happen. When we,
Hmm.
in reality, always knew that if there was a woman involved, they got raped, and usually both of them got killed in the end.
Right. Right.
I
Well,
can't,
I think to myself as a parent, like, knowing that you are powerless and there is another man inside of your home, and you are going to potentially witness or hear your family perish to this disgusting individual. That has to be the most degrading, disgusting way that you could kill me as a human,
Yeah.
is to make me have to
yeah.
hear that, see that, think that. And those are my last thoughts, my last everything.
And it's beyond just death. You're right. It's you hear that and you see that that's the very last things that you hear and see in this world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And especially with this killing, he was so fascinated with the young girl
Mm-hmm.
that he hung her on a pipe in the basement, and as she
Mm-hmm.
struggled,
Mm-hmm.
he masturbated to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of individual you're dealing with.
Right. I've watched a lot of documentaries about his from the point of view of his daughter, from the point of view of the remaining victims, the family members that were left behind in the Otero family. Um, I've listened to his words, and just the idea that someone can be turned on by an innocent young child is just mind blowing to me. But
And he claims that before he killed the little girl, he asked her, "Does your family have a camera anywhere?" Because he decided he wanted to take pictures of this.
Right.
And she's like, "No," with tears in her eyes. Like, I can't even imagine what she was thinking. Um, and um, he told her, "All right, well, you're gonna go to heaven and see your family now."
mhm,
Like, what kind
right,
of sick individual goes from talking about, like, where you're gonna go in the afterlife,
right,
Right.
to
Yeah.
then
mm,
taking the clothing off of a little girl
mhm,
and
And you know what?
tying
I'm not.
them up, making a noose, tying them up, and, hanging them.
Yeah. I'm
Like, I
not
just can't. I cannot even imagine.
trying to enlighten it or justify it, but I can see him being attracted to somebody maybe 17,
Right.
right. This child hadn't even went through puberty yet,
18,
Yeah. Yeah.
but 11.
Right.
right.
So yeah,
Well, and also, I think that that was the only child is the only child that he was, charged for
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
Um, there could have been more,
right.
who knows? But that was the only one that he was charged for. So for him to be so infatuated with her, it
Hmm.
kind of blows my mind that he didn't go after any more children. I'm
Yeah.
glad that
yeah,
he
Well,
didn't,
that's true. Yeah,
but
this was, and I thought about that a little bit, and when I think about the dynamics of a family, I think
yeah,
about dad, of course, being the alpha protector, security person, and then mom is usually more like
the nurturer.
the nurturer, the
Yeah,
lover, the hugger, the let me get you something to eat kind of person, and then the children. The only other case that he was involved in that there was kids that were there on the scene was the Vian lady and her family.
yes, the
And
the little
and
boy
so yes,
took me to the home.
who actually brought him in
Yeah,
on them unknowing to him what he was doing.
right.
So, and he was more annoyed with them, and probably felt like that they were kind of ruining his buzzkill
Yeah,
by
yeah,
by being noisy and being, whatever. So, but I think, the difference in that was here it's single mom and she has these children, and then here he is in this man's home, and it was a complete control issue that,
yeah, yeah, I could see that. Also,
so
I
that
think he mentioned that in that case, he barricaded the 4 children. The
in the
little 6-year-old
bathroom.
boy brought him into the home. I think he used the excuse, "Do you recognize these people? I'm a detective." And
yeah. That's right. Yeah,
the little boy was like, "Oh, I think that's my mom and my sister." And so he takes them to the home, and mom answers the door, and he's like, "Hey, do you recognize these people?" Mom's like, "No," and then he forces his way into the house with a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that he had actually planned out killing somebody else that day, and it didn't end up working
It
out
fell
for
through.
whatever reason.
Yep.
Yeah,
They either didn't come home
yeah.
in like the allotted amount of time or whatever. But I
And so he
just,
barricaded those children in the bathroom, proceeded to,
right.
take advantage, strangle, bind mom.
mhm,
Um, he ended up killing her, but he heard one of the children say, like, somebody's going to be here soon. and so that scared him and he left. But
Yeah.
he said that his intention was to kill the children.
Right.
And to go back to, we've mentioned it so many times before. After these acts of what he did, he just goes back to his normal life,
Yeah.
like it never happened.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
what fascinates me about serial killers. That so many of them can go back and forth between this Jekyll and Hyde thing, and that fascinates me so much. How your brain can turn that on and shut it off so quick.
Well, this is kind of why I like him. I like him. It's because he was the first one that I ever read about or listened to kind of give his reason why, compartmentalizing the things that he did like that, and then be able to go to his 9 to 5 or be able to take care of his family, his daughter and his son, and separate all of those. And his thing has always been Factor X. He has always created this theory in his mind, his own little justification that he has this demon, this factor X or whatever inside of his body that causes him to do the things that he does. Um, he can't really explain it any more than that, but it's just his own sick and twisted way of validation, of justification, and
Right.
saying, this is why I am the way I am. And a lot of the other ones, they don't really have their reason, or they don't say it, but he was one of the very first ones that tried to put a name to it or a title to it by calling it Factor X. And that was how he got his projects. Like, that's how
And that's
he
what he
got.
would call these killings. He would give them a name.
Yeah.
Project,
Mhm,
Yeah.
project,
mhm,
whatever.
And
yeah.
with most serial killers, there's either their childhoods aren't the greatest,
Mhm,
but in his case, in everything that I've read and everything that I've seen, he had a pretty normal childhood.
mhm. Yep.
He just had this sick fascination of, at an early age, he would read a lot of detective magazines,
Mhm,
and he said that he was aroused by most of the covers when they would show women tied
mhm,
up or bound and gagged or
Handcuffed.
something like
Or,
that,
yeah.
mhm,
He
So,
also said that he, um, I think his mom dealt with like a lot of like postpartum depression. He was the oldest of four kids, four boys. And so I think his mom kind of dealt with postpartum depression and she was kind of worried about taking care of the home. Um, I think he said that he wasn't like super close with his mom, but like he didn't by any means have
a
a
hideous,
exactly.
abusive.
Yeah.
I mean,
He
for the
did
most
say
part, it
that
was pretty normal.
he was
Mm,
obsessed with his grandma a little. Um, she, I think she was like Pentecostal or something, and she had super long hair. He said she always wore it in a
mhm,
braid, and she would
mhm.
always wear these like silky what's that material?
Like a polyester.
I think silk, right? Just
Yeah.
silk.
Yeah.
Like hair
Soft.
ties in her hair,
Mhm,
yep, or scarves in her hair, and he would touch them, and he was just kind of like obsessed with that feeling. And
mhm,
then it got to the point where he would find like his mother's undergarments that were silky and soft like that, and he would take those and hide those. And
mhm.
um, he was also
Definitely
not
progressed.
very kind to cats.
Mhm,
He didn't mind dogs, he liked dogs, but he didn't like cats, and he would strangle them and hang them by their neck,
mhm.
which is disgusting. But yeah, for the most part, like, he had a pretty average
Yeah. I
childhood
mean,
for that time
pretty,
period, you
you
know?
know, he wasn't beat. He wasn't
Mm-mm,
sexually abused or anything like
no.
that. I mean, yeah, he grew up in the 50s, and I
Yeah.
mean, he had a pretty normal 50s childhood.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. I think he was always looking for the next best thing, though, as far as in jobs. Like he
Yeah.
didn't seem like he was satisfied. You
Yeah.
know, he would get these jobs and he would excel in them and he would do well in them, and then he would kind of lose interest, and then he would maybe, he was always looking for the power roles, the roles where
Right.
he could run the show or he
Yeah.
could um, you know, be over top of, other employees. And
Kind of
so
like a,
he always
it,
had
yeah, in a
a God
police officer
complex.
type role.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. Yeah. And I just think, I think about his wife and his daughter and his son. And it's like, I think about having to listen to all of the newscasts and the lunchtime news on Saturdays, as I'm sitting there eating my bologna sandwich with my mom and dad, and they go on to talk about, this horrific crime that's being committed down the street, and the fear that you would have as a kid, that someone's breaking into someone's home and strangling or hanging a child. And here I am, a young female child, and I'm saying, wow, like I'm afraid. And
Yeah.
Right.
my
Yeah.
dad saying, don't worry, you don't have anything to worry about. And in her case, she didn't. And he knew that because he was
He was the
the
guy.
man,
Yeah.
he was the man that was
Yeah.
doing all of the stuff. So it's like, there's so
Didn't
many
she?
layers.
Because I know that the daughter like went pretty like. Didn't she write her own book?
Hmm.
She published a book about
Hmm.
her, kind of, I guess, living with
Her
BTK,
experience,
what that was like. Didn't
super
she
close.
find in his journal somewhere that he had sexually abused her when she was younger, but she doesn't remember it?
I don't know that. I'm not familiar with. I
I was
don't
gonna
ever
say, so
remember reading
maybe,
that.
maybe I just read that somewhere and that's not true, but I'm pretty sure I read that she had found, but she doesn't have any recollection of it. So I don't know if that's just kind of like a trauma response for her and she kind of like blocked that out, or she was too young. Um, but I don't really know a whole lot about her. Did she ever like? Did she have a pretty good childhood? Like, was he
Yeah.
good to her as far
So
as she
Yeah.
remembered?
If
she was her, like they were two peas in a pod.
Oh,
She
super
was very,
close.
yeah,
yep,
they were
they shared.
Yeah.
really close. Yeah.
Yeah.
They did all kinds of things together. And
Yeah.
um the boy was kind of more mama's boy, and she was more tomboy.
Yeah.
um he built her this tree house. He would take her hunting, fishing.
Fishing. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They would just, they were constantly doing, the two of
That's
them.
crazy.
So whenever he would be in his dormant periods, not really doing a whole lot of any projects, he was dad of the year. Not to mention, they were super duper involved in their church. So, if there was young lady and father dances, or if
Yeah.
there was Bible study, they were both, very into their church roles together as well.
Yeah.
Well, the whole family, but mainly those two.
Right.
And
Well, and I
she,
also read that he was the leader of like Cub Scouts.
mhm,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that makes sense. He took her fishing and stuff. She was probably,
mhm.
maybe part of that.
Yep. On one of his escapades, he actually was at camp and left there to go do his business and then come back. So there was absolutely nothing in his life that was off limits,
Which
Yeah.
in my
that
opinion.
is like, I mean, the perfect alibi. I mean,
Yeah.
you think about it. We're on a Cub Scout trip, And last
Right.
time we seen Dennis, he was, in his tent, asleep.
Getting ready to blow his candle out and go to bed.
Yeah, and just like everybody else, we were asleep, and the next morning we woke up and he was there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Who's to say that you're going to get up and hike yourself out of these weeds for a
Yeah,
mile to get to your
exactly.
vehicle to go do some horrific stuff and then come back?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, an opportunist he was.
oh, most
And
definitely. Yeah,
He
and
also worked for ADT, like
mhm,
the
that's
security,
right.
home security
I
company.
I forgot about that. You're right.
And he,
mhm,
around this time, Abby earlier said, they'd be sitting around eating their lunch, watching the news on TV, and it would scare people.
mhm,
So in that time, women, families, they were scared. So they would look for, contact
security.
ADT. Hey, I need some better security. And he would go
Right.
in these homes and he'd be hooking up security.
Yeah, and he knew exactly how the security system worked, how
Yeah.
he could
Right.
disable it, and all that stuff. Yeah,
Acting like he's helping protect from the
And
serial
sir.
killer who
Yeah.
was himself. Yeah.
Yeah. There's just so many things about him that it's like a perfect storm of a person.
Yeah.
He was very detail oriented. I feel like he probably had OCD at some level.
Mhm.
Like he was very meticulous, a note keeper. He paid really close attention to like times, dates, things that people did,
Well,
patterns, like
and just the fact that he would
paper.
call these his projects, I feel like
Yeah.
is enough to kind of depict like how much into depth he went before he committed his crimes. He planned everything out to a T.
Hmm.
Um, aside from a few, if just like the one didn't work out and he's like, well, I am going to kill somebody today,
Today.
you know.
Right.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
and that's when he followed the 6-year-old home.
Yeah.
But the majority of the time he didn't fly by the seat of his pants. Like he had it all planned out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he was ready to go.
Yeah.
He was always prepared in his vehicle. He had certain things that, obviously, if you rolled up on him, and you saw those items, it would kind of make you go, I don't think that those go together,
Yeah.
but
right.
he
Yeah,
always did have certain things. He also had a strange fascination, and it probably went back to the grandmother, with items that he would bind with, items that touch skin that he would photograph,
yeah.
certain poses,
He was
certain
obsessed
things.
with that. Yeah,
And whenever he would read those, kind of risque comic books, mystery books, or whatever, his mind would just go off into some wicked spots. And he lived in a whole fantasy virtually
Yeah.
his whole entire life, things he wanted to see. And if he couldn't see them for real,
he
then
made him
he
happen.
he made them happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did he ever actually like, I guess, sexually assault any of his victims?
Yes.
Yeah. Because I
Yeah.
know with like the little girl in the first case, the Otero family, he didn't
Hmm.
actually sexually assault
Touch
her.
her.
He
Right.
didn't touch her. He
Yeah.
just got off to the image of her being bound.
Right. Yeah, and that
Hmm.
Uh,
that actually, I guess, would arouse him to the point. I don't know if it was the act of maybe her dying or the
I
act of
think I
her
think a little bit
struggling, for her life.
I think a little bit of
All of
both.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was curious.
Yeah. I'm
He
pretty
never
sure that
actually
he did have interactions with, strangely enough, the older lady that
That's
was
right.
his
That lived down the
neighbor.
street from him. Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
because I remember his daughter, she referred to her as Mrs. So and so, whatever the last name was, I don't remember. And she said, here we were, I would ride my bicycle. My parents would be walking down, just taking an evening walk, and I'd be riding ahead of them, and Mrs. So and so would be out on her porch and would wave, and my parents would stop and talk to her, and like she watched me grow up. She knew my dad, the whole time that we were neighbors. And she was bothered really severely by the fact that I'm pretty sure that he had some relations with her. I don't know if it was before or after she passed away, but one way or another, I'm pretty sure that he did, assault her in some way bad.
I think her name was Dolores Davis. She was 62.
Okay. I knew that it is. See, I'm not good with names as far as like, the Oteros, of course. And then there was Miss Davis, there was Nancy Fox, there was
I
the
think it
Marine
was
Marine Hedge.
woman.
I think it
Yeah.
was Vicky Weigirl. Weigirl. I don't know how to say it. Yeah.
Mhm.
She was the one that lived right down the street from him.
Yeah, I
Um
think the
and
Fox lady, wasn't she the one that they were kind of like the nail in the coffin because her driver's license were missing. And
So
when they caught,
that
they
was
found
Nancy,
yeah,
right?
when they found all his stuff, they found her driver's license in his
So
stuff.
and
she was one.
he called that one Project Fox Hunt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that one I feel like was almost botched. Like that one was messy, and um I didn't really understand, because a lot of the people are similar, in this, that, or the
Mhm.
other. And I feel like she was a little bit different. So, but it's like, how can you in your mind rationalize things and then just be able to carry on, um, like you didn't just do something horrific, and here your family is, terrified that they're going to be next, and you're the reason that everybody is terrified. Plus he used the media a lot, and I thought that
Oh
that was
yeah.
something that was ballsy and brazen, because he just found that he was the smartest guy in the room all the time. He would bait them and try to get them involved. He liked being in the limelight. He liked being in the spotlight, and
Yeah.
he got a little bit irritated whenever he would die out a little bit. So
Yeah,
he
it's
would
like
Mhm.
it's
fuel it
it's
up.
yeah, it's almost like killing wasn't enough. Let's taunt the police.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like he would call the police from a payphone, and say, "You'll find so and so's body in their home. You should probably go check," you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then he would write like letters or, and there was usually like some kind of code in there that they had
Mm-hmm.
to kind of decipher, what he was saying.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think he saw that they were the Oteros. The police were searching the roof of the house for the keys. So, um, at another victim's house, he tosses their keys up on the roof because
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "Oh, you guys are going to look there? Well,
I'll show you. Yeah.
let me just leave this here for you all." Like
Right.
he loved the
The
media.
game. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, it was a game for him.
Yeah, it was totally a game. And it's kind of like not exactly like the Jigsaw character in, all the Saw movies without the weird, creepy, here, figure this out to get loose
Yeah.
type thing. But it was still the taunting of, local law enforcement. Plus, he was sending not only these things to law enforcement, but he was sending them to the local news people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think he had a little bit of a thing for one of the female newscasters,
Mm.
because there was certain times or certain showings that he would appear at that were hers. And I think that he had a thing for her. But, I watched him stand up and give the accounts of his crimes, and he was the most flat, matter of fact,
There was just nothing there.
say it like you're reading off a recipe,
Yes, yes.
coldness that I was just like, what is wrong with you fundamentally as a human? That you
He
can just say the words that you are saying
like it
Recount
was
all of
nothing.
and
these events.
Just like it was
And
nothing.
yeah,
have zero emotion
Yeah,
unless it had to do with you getting caught.
yeah.
he talked about these things. I watched the video where he was in court,
Yeah.
and he was
And
giving
he
great,
looks so
just matter
normal.
of fact. Yeah,
He looks so
but
normal.
he was giving these accounts of each killing that he did, and it was just like he was talking about, driving to the grocery store.
Yeah.
It was just that so nonchalant.
Yeah. Crazy.
That's
Just wow.
creepy.
Yeah.
That you give that much value to a human life. It's one thing to kill a person, but when you bind somebody and torture somebody and rape somebody and
Hmm.
kind of ag on that everything's going to be okay, when daggone good and well you're going to die.
Right.
And he's kind of reassuring you that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Do what I say and everything, you'll be fine.
Right.
And it's just so nonchalant that's the creepy thing. And then, go from that to go back to your family. Just like,
Hmm.
hey, I've been at work, or I've been, around the block. I've been talking
Right.
to a friend. I've been at the grocery store. You just like, it's so nothing.
Right.
And it also makes you wonder, like, if he had no emotion during, you know, his crime sprees that he was going on, it makes you wonder, like, how does he have emotion with his family or people in his life?
Yes, I've thought
You
that.
know?
I've wondered that myself. How do you connect with your own daughter and your own son or
Right.
your own wife? And how do you separate that? How do you keep from killing them? How
Right.
do you separate that?
Right.
Well, and
Well,
it's just like if you have no emotion, like how do you show any kind of love or affection to your wife or your children,
Right. And
you know,
here's what I've often
without
wondered
crossing that line?
with serial killers. Because, most serial killers do have a normal family life. They do have children. They do have a wife, or in some cases, a husband. How do you separate that from letting them be your next victim?
well, in my opinion on this case and a lot of other ones like that, one, you always have to have a cover.
Yeah.
Who's going to think that, you're a serial murderer if you are the president of your church congregation and your
Right.
son
So that's
cuts
kind of your
out
alibi.
leader? So that's your cover.
Yeah.
Two, I think that in your own sick world, because they're so selfish, that they do these things to please their selfish motives, that they have to have a soft place to fall because it's probably very exhausting
Oh, I'm
living
sure. Yeah.
a double life and doing all of the things that one must do to take care of all of their wants and needs that they have to fulfill. And then for a family, they have to provide. So that's very challenging.
And you
Time
think about
management.
this. I mean, how many times were you at, a serial killer is at a birthday party or a, say, Christmas time with your kids and your family, and
Hmm.
all of a sudden this pops into your head, hey, I've got such and such buried somewhere,
Right.
and that's happened.
Oh, I'm sure that
And
that's probably part of why they do what they do, because they love those mementos. They love those memories because they'll say, especially if their victims are disturbed or bothered or found, they get really upset about it because they view those folks as theirs. How dare you move them from where I placed them?
or how I placed him.
Those, yeah, how I placed them, that was mine. That was my masterpiece, my doing, my work, my handiwork. And you disturbed it.
And you know what's really scary? The statistic is that there are around 30 serial killers operating in the United States at all times.
That is really scary.
That is scary.
Mm.
That is super scary. And, I can't imagine what it would be like to be face to face with someone that you know who has killed before, and that you're in that situation. Say you're laying on the floor and your hands are tied behind your back and you're undressed, and
Mhm.
knowing that this guy has killed before,
And
how
he's
this is going to
planning to
turn
kill
out.
you. Yeah, I
Yeah,
couldn't imagine.
just the fear alone would just about kill you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There was one of his victims that I think had even like gotten sick before he had killed her. She had vomited everywhere because she
Mm.
knew it was going to happen. It made her sick to her stomach, you know.
Mm.
There
Mm.
and going back to him being the president of his church or whatever. One of his victims, he put in the trunk of their vehicle, drove them to his church, got them out. They were already deceased. Takes the body inside the church and poses them and takes pictures of
At,
them.
at the
Yeah,
altar.
And at the altar inside of the church.
that's a direct friggin' highway to hell right there.
Slap in the face right there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's you're going straight to hell for that one, buddy.
Yeah.
And that just baffles me.
But then
Yeah.
again,
That's
we're
how
back
sick he
to
was.
what, in his mindset. I mean, are we talking about this? Is this something that was kind of born into him, or is he wired different? Is his emotion just, the emotion for human life, is it just not there? Is it a fetish? Is it, I mean, there's so many questions that
That's what
can
I
be
mean.
asked.
It's like a perfect storm. There's so many layers that this has to be in place, this has to be there, a little bit of this has to be there, a lot of this has to be there, or it wouldn't have worked, you
Right. And
know?
then he has to have the balls to execute on that.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And he did.
He
Oh, he
did.
most definitely did for years.
And
Hmm.
he enjoyed talking about it. And like I said, he was real irritated whenever he felt like that the world had forgotten about him. Here he got caught up in
Yeah.
his everyday life doing his stuff. And nobody was speaking BTK's name. And what's he do? He makes a crossword search. He drops some letters in the mail at Cake
Right.
TV. He reminds people who and what he is, because he probably would have lived the rest of his life if he would have just shut up about it. Yeah, he would have
And
known,
nobody would have known.
but he would have
Yeah.
never have been caught. They probably figured BTK's long gone, moved, dead, or what have you, in prison. And he would have lived his life, the remainder of it,
And
quietly if
nobody
he
would have known.
would have. Yeah.
And you got to remember that a lot of these killings happen pre DNA stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And today it would be a lot harder for him to get away with what he got away with without leaving some type of DNA behind.
Mhm.
Well, I think that's actually like the hard evidence that got him.
It was
Um,
100%.
yeah.
His
Well, and on
daughter,
So the
top,
his
killings
daughter's
happened.
tissue, his daughter's tissue
Yes.
right,
is what
right,
got him. Yep. And
but
it was right at the very beginning of DNA, but
Yeah.
they did have enough common sense in
to save it, yeah.
one of the rape kits to save it.
And wasn't
Or
it
from, it may
like,
have actually been Josie. It may have actually been from the scene where, he did what he did at the feet of her, body.
right?
Mhm.
And
I
wasn't it
think that
like,
there was one victim that had scratched him real good in his face. And he
Mhm.
says, when he's in court, he's like, if you look close enough, you can even still see the scars. Like he was all for everybody like looking, look what happened during this, you
right?
know.
And you
And
know,
so I think she had some of his tissue under his and under her
Fingernail.
fingernails. Yeah.
and on top of that, wasn't it? I don't know if it was a news station or a newspaper that I don't remember how many years it was after. Like, after he went dormant, like 15, 20 years, maybe 30
Mhm.
years. And they wrote a story or did a story on, BTK. Is he dead?
It
Is
was
he
his,
this and that? And he come
yeah,
out like, no, I'm still here.
Yeah.
yeah. It was
And
his
after
I
that,
believe it
he
was his
was
30-year anniversary, and he didn't last very much longer after that because he got contrite, and then he was very trusting in the police, and they said, no, we can't track you via a floppy
A
disk.
floppy disk. That's right. Yeah.
You just go ahead and send that baby on over, and you're going to be anonymous forever. And lo and behold, it turned out that it had not only his name, but
But the
his
church.
church, the address, pretty
Yeah.
much to the direction to the doors of
yeah.
where he typed those letters out from.
Right.
So shame on him. That church came back to get
And you
him.
know what? You think about that. As smart as that guy was to elude police all of those years,
Right. What
and
a dummy.
he's corresponding back and forth with the police through these news ads.
Oh, like cat
And
and mouse all day long.
they say, or he asks, can you track a floppy disk? And they say no. And he
No.
believes them.
Right.
Yeah.
After
Right.
being
Because,
so meticulous after all of these years,
well,
he's
he's
actually
better.
taking the word of the police saying, oh no, we can't track a floppy disk. Send us one, please.
Right. Right.
Come on.
Right. His arrogance was what was his downfall. Because I believe wholeheartedly that he would have never been caught ever had he not wanted, his name back out there.
If he would have never responded to that news story
Hmm.
and would have lived the rest of his life
Hmm.
Hmm.
until the day he died, they would have never figured out who this guy was.
No,
He
100%
was
agree.
also, I think, scoping, planning out his next murder too when he was arrested.
So you think he
Hmm.
was getting the itch to do it again?
Oh, for sure.
And
Yep.
on top of
Hmm.
that, if you remember the cereal box that he left at the
Yeah.
stop sign, and they got the
Hmm.
video from him, I think
Hmm.
from a Home Depot,
Yep.
where
Hmm.
he left that cereal box or a
And
Barbie
that
or
guy,
something,
in the
you
guy's
know.
pickup, bed of his
Yeah,
pickup truck.
yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
And they actually got the type of vehicle that he was driving from, I think it was
Jeep
a
Hmm.
Home
Cherokee.
Depot.
Jeep
Yep.
Cherokee.
Jeep
Yeah.
Cherokee.
And that's when they kind of put two and two together and they started looking at the daughter. If I remember right, was it a swab from a pap smear
Yeah.
It was.
that
Yep.
that it come back that said, well, we don't know if Dennis Rader is the BTK, but the father of this girl is
Yeah.
Is
BTK.
Yeah.
right. Yep.
So
Yep. That's what it
crazy.
was. You're right. How it all just goes back to, snot or skin cells or Something
DNA.
so small.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The building blocks of life. He's
And I
mind
think
blowing.
the day they actually executed the actual stop on the vehicle, he didn't deny it. He said, I can't remember the exact words, but it was basically like, "You got me,"
Yep. Yep.
you know.
I think they
Yep.
said, do you know why we're here? Do you know what we're here for? And he's like, yeah, I have my
No
suspicions.
suspicions. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So at that time, he knew the gig was up.
Yep. But then it started a whole other phase of his life because now he gets to recall it. He gets to
Yeah.
retell it. He gets
Yeah.
to
Right.
live it all
And he loves it.
again, and he loves it.
Yep. His wife filed for emergency divorce after he was caught.
Mhm.
Sure.
And
Yeah. As you would. Yeah.
I just can't even imagine, which, like, I know that the daughters put out a story, but I can't imagine, what the wife was thinking and, like,
Mhm.
what little things, she was putting together. Like, oh,
I
how did I
know.
miss this?
Right. Yeah. But he
I just
had that
can't
room
imagine.
that I guess was in their house that was pretty much off limits to everybody.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's kind of where he kept his mementos as far as,
Mhm.
photographs, earrings, necklaces,
Driver's
whatever.
license.
Yeah.
Yeah. He would take pictures of his victims, but he would also dress himself up
That's
and
right.
take pictures of himself.
Just like the victims. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of,
So
I guess, like reenacting what had happened,
Mhm.
you know.
it's crazy, man. It's so
I think he
Concrete.
crazy.
had a mask. Didn't he have a mask like
He
that
did.
made him look like a female or
Yeah.
something?
Mhm.
He did.
Long
Yeah. And he
hair.
actually
Mhm.
didn't he have a victim that he put that mask on, or a
Mhm.
Oh,
mask
I don't
similar
know.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't know that.
So yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
Disgusting.
Yeah. If we could break
Disgusting
down
human being.
all of those victims, like that'd be a whole other show, but it would be something, I feel like, just
Yeah.
well,
picking them out.
sadly enough, we are out of time.
We could go
Oh,
on and on and on.
And you know what? We may do a part two to this.
Yeah.
right.
So um, everybody just kind of stay tuned. Guys, check us on the Facebook page, Nighthawk Radio, one word, Nighthawk Radio. Check us out on Seth's Daily Podcast for YouTube and Spotify, and Seth the Soil Guy for TikTok. Guys, if you like this stuff, check us out on the Facebook page, like, share, whatever you can do. This has been Two Girls, One Cut. Guys,
Part two.
thank you so
That's right.
much.
Thanks, Trace.
Thank you guys for watching.
Have a good night.